I'm Dr. Adam Booker. I teach double bass at Appalachian State University, and it's my pleasure and my honor to help you and walk you through the fire within for the NCMEA Honors Orchestra. I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you get some good ideas out of it. The first thing that I want to talk about is the very beginning of the piece. Now, this is a very exciting, very spirited piece. And as a young bass player, I know the first thing I would want to do is let loose on the A with everything that I have, with the most string possible, with the biggest thing possible. But that's actually not what I'm going to do now that I'm a little older and wiser. What I'd encourage you to do is actually play that A on the E string. And I'll show you how. So, of course, I've tuned up and everything. And here's what the beginning would sound like if I were going to play an open A. We want to sound our best from the first note, right? Now, here's an open A. That's kind of cool. It could be loud. But this A is going to be a little bit slower to start because just this big, wide, long, vibrating string. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it with my first finger on the E string. And just for an extra kick, I'm going to have my bow kind of at a slight angle like this. I'm going to start vibrato before I even play the note. Find that spot on my bow that actually is, we call it the balance point. And I'm going to vibrato right here. And it's a much more controlled sound. See, there's a lot more point to that sound versus this. And you hear that kind of metallic on the top of that. So let's not do the open A string. Let's do A on the E string with first finger. And notice on my bow stroke, I'm pushing down a little bit. My bow's at slight angle, and I'm just pushing down. That's going to get the right effect, the right accent, the capo mark over there with the staccato mark on top of it. It's going to be nice and short, and it's going to be a lot better for, I think, the overall sound. Remember, forte doesn't mean loud, it means strong. So we don't want to go for our loudest A, we want to go for our strongest A. The next thing I want to talk about is the really fun Bartok pizzicato. Now, you may not be familiar with this particular articulation. It literally means pulling the string up and letting it rebound. Again, if we do this on the open A, it's going to be a little bit less focused of a sound. But if we're right here, much more focused sound. Remember, there's other bass players playing this, so you don't have to be the hero and do everything yourself. So since we're already here, we're ready to play the next passage. Now, again, if we're doing this off the open string, and then we have this, that's very tempting to do. But since we're already here, everything we need is still under our fingers. It's all right there. So I'm going to go 1, and then when I get to the, or actually I'm going to go 1 with the Bartok pizzicato, and then when I get to the triplet, so that's 4, 2, 2, 1. So now I want to talk about this little passage that goes from the E flat down to the A. I'm going to do this whole thing on the A string. So it's going to sound a little bit more like this. Now here, once we get to this part, the bow on the string is going to stop that A with plenty of time, and the articulation is going to be right. It's just when we have to play that A by itself without all the 16th notes that I want that more focused first finger on the A string fingering. But in this case, totally fine to do it right there. But getting into that, I'd much rather start on the A string, so I don't have to worry about string crossings while I'm doing this. Right? Versus you're running a lot of risks of getting a bad note or a bad sounding note out of that. And we don't want bad sounding notes, do we? So going into measure 26, so I went up the A string, open, open, 1, 4, 2, 4. Again, with the whole bass section playing that this way, it's going to sound a lot more focused. Remember, again, we don't want to try to play everything triple forte. We don't want to be heroes. We want to rely on our section. So if you play your part accurately, it's going to sound a lot better when it's all put together. When we get to measure 88, we have this duple feel against the triplet feel. This might be confusing to some people. This is why I encourage when we're playing things in 6/8 that we feel it in 2, not in 6. By that I mean, instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I want you to feel it this way. 1, 2, 1, 2. So when you're feeling the bigger beat, it makes it easier to feel the duple against that bigger beat. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At measure 79, we start this duple feel. Now, I'm not going to do this A starting down here to this E. This music moves a little bit too fast for that. So I'm going to find this A right here, which is consequently, incidentally, one of your tuning notes, right? If you're tuning with harmonics. I'm going to find this A right here and play that fifth that we have perfectly underneath our fingers in this position. Moving on, looking at some fingering ideas for this section, pick up to measure 80. I'm going to start fourth finger, third for some people, they like third finger for that F sharp, and I'm going to come down and do a pivot to the E. 2, 1, 2, 2, 1. Again, that's 4, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1. Sits right nicely under the fingers right over here. The pickup into measure 87, I'm going to start with second finger on the D string, and I'm going to go 2, 1, 4, 4. So since we're over here, we have everything we need to accomplish these next couple of passages right in this section of the bass. This might be an uncomfortable section for some people, but I encourage you to explore it, because once we get to this middle section of the instrument, the rest of the instrument is like gravy. It's easy to play anything at that point. So some ideas, if we're coming from here, I have a C sharp right here underneath my first finger. 1, 4, 4, 4. It just fits right there. So starting on the C sharp, 1, 1, 4, 4, 4. Moving on, I have 2, 4 for the F to F sharp, 2, 4. Now at this point, I might actually come back. I'll come back a little further when I actually play it live. So again, using this area of the bass is very advantageous to this. Otherwise, you're going to be doing something along the lines of this, which is doable. Again, I want you to find the easiest way to do it for you. If this is easier, coming up and down the neck, I'm just throwing ideas out for you. At measure 104, we introduce a new little passage here where we're starting on the G sharp. So what I did there was 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4. We can do the same thing going into 114. And there we are, back at first finger for that A. So the less I have to move here, the more I can concentrate on my bow and get that crescendo into that. Now looking at measure 121, that's when we get to shine, right? We get to shine as a section. Since we're already here at this first finger, underneath our fourth finger on the D string is going to be that A. So we can vibrato the whole way. Now pay attention, this is a mezzo piano passage. It's not a forte passage. Rely on your section. You can actually play a little under what you think you're supposed to do dynamically. So you see how much of that I did on the D string? Landed on an open A. I'm forgetting the bowing right now, but I just want to give you some fingerings. 2 on that G sharp. 4 back on the A. 4. E on the A string. Slight pivot up to the C. Fourth finger. 2, 1. 4, 1. Still on 1, 2, 4. You can come back to fourth finger here. So 4, 1. And then my second finger is right over top of that F. And I think that's probably the most difficult passage for us, honestly. And it makes it, I think it just makes it a whole lot easier if we just not try to cross too many strings while we're doing that. Otherwise, it looks a little bit like this. Let me see. So we have... every time I hit one of those open D's or an open G or something like that, it just sounds slightly different than when I have it closed on the D string. Let me, I'm going to play at 129, and I'm going to do it two different ways. I'm going to do it one in first position, and again over here in at the tuning A. So I'll do it down here in the low position first. From up here. There's a slight difference in the way it sounds. I think it's a little bit more controlled when we're doing it on the D string like this. Another thing I want to talk about in the passage at 121 is how to cut the tied notes. Now what I mean by that is when you see the G sharp tied to, that's the dotted quarter note G sharp tied to the eighth note G sharp, I personally would like to imagine that the eighth note is actually a rest. So there's a slight difference between see, there's a little bit of a break in there. That's without a break. But this sucker moves, doesn't it? So if it's going to go as fast as we want it to, sometimes that's going to make us fall behind a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of a break in it. See how I cut that first eighth note? If you can get into the habit of cutting some of those eighth notes, it's going to help you move a lot faster. It's going to help you clean this section up, and it's going to make it not bog down, not feel like it's dragging. It's kind of like stopping the air, and all I'm doing is just stopping the bow. So on and so forth. Okay, so now what I want to do is give you guys a couple of little tips about recording this thing. First off, regardless of what you're recording this on, it's always preferred that you use a halfway decent microphone. Now what that means to you can mean something completely different to a lot of other folks. Of course, just record with whatever you have on hand. Don't rush out to go try to buy, you know, $1,000 U87 or anything like that. What generally works for double bass is almost any mic can actually work if you position it correctly. So I don't want to get into the weeds technically here, but what I do want to recommend is whatever you use to record it with, that you stand 6 to 8 feet away from it, okay? Because the bass vibration is so wide and so long that you don't actually get the full vibration of the instrument unless you're using something very, very expensive and very, very technical. I personally recommend to my students, at a bare minimum, the Zoom H1, which is just a little like stereo microphone that you can actually plug into your computer and use as a USB mic. If you're using a USB mic, make sure you check your levels on those kind of things, okay? So again, 6 to 8 feet away from the microphone, that would probably sound pretty good. You might be able to cheat it 3 or 4 feet in either direction, preferably a little bit closer. Make sure that you keep an eye on your levels, and always, of course, go back and listen to what it was that you recorded. And what we're going to listen for is things like digital distortion or things like that's when there's too much sound going into the microphone, and the microphone and the preamp, whatever you're using, can't quite handle it, and it distorts. You might have actually heard that a couple times on this recording when I may be a little bit too powerful. So that's what I have to say about microphones. Now, as far as using headphones, avoid using any kind of Bluetooth headphones or anything like that, because that sends signals through the air, and that's going to distort, or that's going to just do weird things to your recording. You might hear popping sounds or weird radio frequency interference or things like that in your recording. We want to avoid that as much as we can. Also, when it comes to headphones, because you're going to want to record this with headphones, because there's a wonderful track that has a click track to it, which is great for you guys, because in the professional world, we often do find ourselves working with click tracks, especially if you're playing in a symphony backing up, say, a pop group or something like that. Almost all of those touring groups, they generally have a full sound system. Everybody's using in-ear monitors, and that's synced to some kind of MIDI or click track that you're going to have to play along with. You'll find this in circuses, you'll find this in the Las Vegas scene, you'll find this even in recording sessions, and nowadays, even recording in your own house. I've personally had at least 3 or 4 different recordings sent my way that involved just basically, here's the music, here's a click track, and get to it. Maybe if I was lucky, I'd get the music and a MIDI track. In some cases, I get what we call music -1, which was like everybody else recorded. Now here's your spot for the bass. Here's where the click track is set. Either way, everything was going through my ears. Everything was to a click track, and I had to sync it up that way. A big piece of that is making sure that you don't have your playback track, what you're listening to and playing to, turned up so loud that you can't hear yourself because you play out of tune. Okay? Another thing to think about is we know what the tempo is for this, and we have a great recording. And what I want you to think about doing before you just sit down and try to barrel through it and record all the way through it, because you're going to want to take this in one take, is that you take all of this music and you get a metronome handy and you start practicing it at least, half speed. And I know that sounds like a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but it's going to be so worth it in the end. Recording it, or practicing it at half speed is going to get you to the point where everything is going to be a lot more accurate. And accuracy counts when we're working to a click track. With the click track going on, and say starting it at dotted quarter note at 50 and just gradually working it up, you're going to be so much more comfortable than if you had just gone in and tried to play it straight the first time. So make sure that when you practice with the click track, you practice it both ways. One with the click set to the triplet, i.e. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then get that click track, or get your metronome to where you're practicing it in 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Because there's an old maxim when we're reading music that the faster the music is, the slower we want to count. You don't want to be going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 while you're trying to play and concentrate at the same time. Counting to 2 is going to take up a lot less of your brain doing that. I hope you understand that. And I think that's going to help you get through this music and get through the recording process a lot better. So again, doesn't matter what mic you use, just make sure you set it up and that you check that microphone level before you record. Don't have your playback track so loud that you can't hear yourself and you end up playing out of tune. And practice, starting at about half speed and working your way up. Whatever method you like. I prefer the +10 -5 method, or that's when you play it at, say, 50 beats per minute, and then you go up to 60 beats per minute, and then you drop it back to 55 beats per minute, and then you go up to 65 beats per minute, and then you drop it back to 60, and so on and so forth. Another trick is to be able to play this about 10 clicks faster than what's actually prescribed. Not so that you learn how to rush, but that you're just so comfortable at that faster speed that when you're playing it at the actual performance tempo, it just goes like butter. You'll just have no problem. You'll be thoroughly relaxed while you're performing it. So those are my tips for this piece of music. I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at bookeras1@appstate.edu, and of course, talk to your private teacher if you have one, or talk to your orchestra director, and just have fun playing music, because that's why we're doing this in the first place. I hope you guys have a wonderful time, and I look forward to seeing the final product, and thank you, NCMEA, for asking me to do this for you. Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Booker, bass instructor at Appalachian State University, and it's my pleasure and my honor to bring to you some of this. Scratch that, try it again. Hi, my name is Dr. Adam Booker. I'm the bass teacher at Appalachian State University, and it is both my pleasure and my honor to talk you through some of the NCMEA Honors Orchestra bass parts. We're going to be working through The Fire Within by Brian Balmaj, and I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you enjoy some of the Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Booker, assistant professor of double bass at the Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Booker. I teach double bass at Appalachian State University, and it's my pleasure and my honor to help you and walk you through The Fire Within for the NCMEA Honors Orchestra. I hope you enjoy this video, and I hope you get some good ideas out of it.